As he walked through the forest, the boy tripped and injured himself. Angry and filled with rage, he began making malicious plans against a princess, showing obsessive and disturbing behavior. Exhausted and lost in the forest, the boy walked aimlessly, feeling hunger and pain in his feet. As he neared a clearing, he noticed strange movements around him. Turning around, he saw several dark figures approaching, realizing he was no longer alone. Surrounded by monstrous creatures in the middle of the forest, the boy panicked as he realized he was facing a horde of goblins. Without thinking twice, he turned and ran desperately to try to escape. The boy tripped during his escape and fell to the ground. Surrounded by the goblins, he became desperate when he realized there was no escape route. One of them grabbed him from behind, and the others quickly closed in, ready to attack. The boy was dragged by the goblins and tried to break free, but was held down forcefully. In a panic, he realized the monsters were hungry for violence. Even injured and desperate, he fought to escape, but was soon surrounded again and knocked to the ground. Even trying to convince himself that goblins were weak enemies, the boy was easily subdued. He was surrounded, attacked, and immobilized, screaming in pain and despair, completely powerless against the creature's violence. Gravely injured and surrounded by goblins, the boy began to lose strength. As his body was held, he thought of his homeland and silently begged for help, not wanting to die there. His gaze grew emptier, and his hand dropped to the ground, unresponsive. A few hours before the events in the forest, in a peaceful location surrounded by mountains, people reacted with shock and surprise to something unexpected. The scene took place in a busy building, possibly a school or station, where the routine was interrupted by a loud scream. As everyone tried to understand what was happening, students and teachers realized they were no longer in the same place. The entire school had been transported to another mysterious location. The students discovered they were in another world and were greeted by soldiers. Shortly after, a woman appeared and introduced herself as Camellia Reisenberg, the third princess of that kingdom, revealing that she was responsible for summoning them. Surprise took over everyone as they realized they were far from Japan. One of the students tried to take advantage of the situation, making inappropriate comments toward the princess. In response, Camellia made it clear that the summoned ones were not heroes, but disposable soldiers. She gave them two options: obey, fight, and die, or refuse and be eliminated. This shocked the students, who realized they were being treated as cannon fodder. The student who disrespected the princess was quickly restrained by the soldiers and received a direct warning: obedience or death. Meanwhile, another more cautious student asked for permission to ask a question, which the princess allowed, showing that she would not tolerate disobedience, but would accept dialogue if there was respect. The class representative, Yuka Asakawa, remained calm and thanked the princess for promising a return if everyone cooperated. She then asked the princess about the possibility of returning to their original world. Camellia coldly responded, stating that anyone without talent would be discarded, reinforcing the cruel tone of the summoning. The students underwent a magical evaluation test, using a sphere that detected the type and level of magic in each of them. One student explained how the test worked, while another stood out with above-average results. Excitement grew when one of the tests caused a strong magical reaction, drawing everyone's attention. During the test, Yuka touched the magical sphere, which shone with extreme intensity, surprising everyone. The light was so bright that it caused visual discomfort to those present. Camellia was impressed to see that Yuka had great magical power with an affinity for light, recognizing her as a rare and valuable resource. Takayama received praise for having a strong magical affinity and was surrounded by female classmates, gaining prominence among the students. Meanwhile, another student watched the scene with envy. Excited, Funa was the next to touch the sphere, confident and curious to discover his own magical power. Funa was frustrated to find that his magical affinity was weak and was ridiculed for it. Next, it was the protagonist's turn, who approached confidently, believing he had special powers. Meanwhile, the princess commented that she expected average results from most, but seemed to be paying attention to the upcoming tests. With great enthusiasm, the protagonist tried to demonstrate his power before the magical sphere, giving a dramatic performance. However, the sphere didn't react, and the result was considered a total failure. He was shocked to realize that, in the eyes of others, he had no magical ability. The protagonist tried again to touch the sphere, but the light was minimal. The evaluators confirmed that he was a complete failure, a misfit. Surprise spread among his classmates, and even the examiners were taken aback, as failures like this rarely occurred in summons. The boy was in shock and humiliated in front of everyone. After being declared a failure, the protagonist was ignored by everyone. The princess coldly stated that he was free to leave since he had no use. Meanwhile, Yuka, the class representative, tried to argue that he should not just be abandoned, showing compassion and being seen as a true leader by her classmates. Yuka insisted that it was cruel to abandon someone just for lacking magic. The princess, pressured, gave the protagonist two options: continue with the group and serve in a simple role, or cross a dangerous forest alone toward a nearby town. He was given one last chance. Alone and injured in the forest, the protagonist was surrounded and attacked by goblins near death. Without the strength to fight back, he panicked and screamed for help, begging not to die there. Just as he was about to die, the protagonist saw several skeletal warriors appear out of nowhere. These creatures attacked and easily defeated the goblins. Confused and not understanding what was happening, he stayed still while the monsters fought around him. The boy woke up on the ground surrounded by the skeletons that had saved him. Still injured and confused, he stood up, scared, not understanding why these monsters were there or why they weren't attacking him. The boy discovered he could communicate mentally with the skeletons, who recognized him as their master. They swore full obedience and promised to protect him with all their strength. Without understanding how, he now commanded an army of the undead. The skeletons introduced themselves as former loyal knights who had died in battle. Now resurrected, they swore allegiance to the boy, who had unknowingly summoned them. One of them explained that this could only be possible if he had a rare necromancy talent, contradicting the earlier diagnosis that he was a failure. One of the skeletons explained that due to the boy's necromantic qualities, the magical evaluation sphere should have reacted differently. Another suggested that he might possess both light and darkness attributes, which canceled the sphere's response, making it seem like he had no magic at all. The boy understood that his light and darkness attributes were perfectly balanced, preventing the magical sphere from detecting anything. He also realized something even stranger. Despite being brutally injured by the goblins, his body had fully regenerated, suggesting there was something unusual about his powers. The skeletons warned that stronger enemies would soon appear in the forest and that, in their current state, they wouldn't be able to protect the boy. To improve, they suggested absorbing magic stones from other monsters to strengthen themselves. However, this process would cause some of them to disappear forever. The protagonist hesitated, not wanting to lose his new allies. Reluctantly, the boy agreed that he needed to choose which skeletons would stay with him. He selected Reinhardt, Baston, and Fred to remain, while the others would be sent to eternal rest. Those who remained promised to honor the fallen companions and protect their new master with all they had. Emotional, the boy thanked the skeletons for saving him. Those who were leaving comforted him, saying they were happy to finally rest in peace. They asked him to let them go with a smile, believing they would reunite with their loved ones on the other side. The skeletons chosen to depart said their goodbyes with gratitude and disappeared in beams of light, finally going to eternal rest. The boy watched them, emotional, thanking them for everything and wishing them peace. The boy gathered the magic stones left by the goblins and other monsters, totaling 18 units. With the help of the remaining skeletons, he learned how to use them. He just had to press them against the chest of the undead, using his necromantic power to make them absorb the energy and strengthen themselves. Even without knowing how to consciously use his powers, the boy was instructed to simply imagine stronger skeletons while helping to absorb the magic stones. With this in mind, he decided to cooperate, activating his necromantic gifts to strengthen his companions. Using the magic stones, the boy strengthened his three allies. Reinhardt gained resistance similar to tungsten. Baston became as strong as titanium, and Fred became light and agile like carbon fiber. With this, the group now had an elite army under direct command. The boy watched in amazement as a powerful energy surrounded the skeletons, signaling the completion of the fusion with the magic stones. The intense glow and powerful aura made it clear they had become much stronger. The three skeletons appeared completely transformed, with more robust appearances and reinforced armor. The boy watched in surprise and awe at the result, realizing he now had true elite warriors by his side. The boy was amazed by the visual evolution of the skeletons, especially one of them, who now seemed 3 times more intimidating. Compared to its previous form, it had transformed from something ordinary into an elite warrior. Despite the power, he admitted he would be scared if he saw that appearance at night. The smell of goblin corpses attracted hungry ogres to the area. Realizing the danger, the boy ordered his warriors to attack. The skeletons, now strengthened, advanced ready to show how much they had evolved. Reinhardt took the lead in the attack against the ogres, advancing confidently. Even in the face of a gigantic enemy, he seemed excited for the fight. The boy, watching from afar, was surprised to see his ally fighting with such enthusiasm. Reinhardt faced the ogre head-on, not backing down from the enemy's brute strength. Even after being struck, he maintained his posture and enjoyed the fight. With a powerful counterattack, he struck the ogre and brought it down with a cry of pain. Reinhardt crushed the ogres with ease, showing power far beyond what was expected. While celebrating excitedly with his new body, the other skeletons noticed how much he had changed, now acting more intensely and even a little frightening. The skeletons knelt before the boy, swearing total loyalty for having received powerful bodies and weapons. Even though he didn't consider himself a good leader, he was recognized by all as their master, now with a loyal army under his command. The boy named the weapons of his 3 commanders. Reinhardt's sword was named Gram, Baston's spear was called Gaybolg, and Fred's twin swords were named Levatine and Deinslife. They all thanked him with respect. They then warned of the danger of crossing the demon forest alone. Kent realized that crossing the demon forest alone was practically suicide, and complained to the princess who had sent him on this mission. His skeletal allies warned of the dangers of the journey and asked if he intended to eliminate all the demons they encountered along the way. Kent began to suspect the true motives behind the summoning. He realized that if they were truly soldiers for a war, they would have been sent to the kingdom's border, not to the center. Based on that, he concluded that the princess who summoned them might be trying to use the students in a coup to take the throne. Kent and the skeletons found an abandoned cart on the road. From the situation, they deduced it had been attacked by monsters. Kent took the opportunity to get new clothes, since his were torn. One of the skeletons suggested using the cart's cargo, which would rot if left there. While looking for clothes in the cart, Kent realized most of them were women's, and too big for him. As he rummaged through the items, he found a strange bracelet. One of the skeletons explained it was a slave bracelet, used to control slaves or criminals, suggesting that this was the type of cargo the cart had been carrying before the attack. Kent began to connect the dots about the slave bracelets, suspecting that the princess was keeping his classmates as slaves. While thinking about it, he felt bad for being free while the others might be suffering. One of the skeletons tried to reassure him, saying the princess probably still needed the students alive for some purpose. Kent, even without understanding everything, decided he wanted to help the others if he got the chance. Kent believed he was discarded just because he was a complete failure, which made him think his classmates were safe. Emotionally, he promised he would remove the bracelets from everyone. One of the skeletons reassured him, saying he had a rare magical talent, perhaps unique in the continent, which surprised Kent and strengthened his determination. As Kent tries to figure out how to remove the bracelets, he's warned that if not done properly, it will be difficult to take them off. Baston seems disturbed, and the skeletons explain that dark mages can use shadows to conceal or summon familiars from a distance. Kent starts to wonder if he can use this magic to store objects, like the money he found in the cart. Kent changes clothes and, encouraged by the skeletons, attempts to use magic purely by imagination. The technique works, and he's impressed by how easy and powerful it is. He calls it cheating. Kent discovers he can move through shadows, store objects in a hidden space, and even summon skeletons directly from there. Meanwhile, the 3 skeletons continue to train and get stronger during the journey to Volzard. On the 4th day after leaving the forest, Kent and his allies spot the city of Volzard. Even though he could enter through the shadows, he decides to approach via the main entrance to avoid future problems, pretending to have escaped the forest alone. Kent arrives at the city entrance, pretending to be exhausted. A guard sees him and runs to help. Despite entering as planned, he feels a bit guilty for deceiving someone who only wanted to help. Kent wakes up in an unfamiliar room, confused. He's soon informed by a soldier that he's at a post in Volzard's garrison. He arrived looking awful the previous day, but now seems to be feeling better. Kent talks to the captain of the 3rd garrison, who reassures him about surviving alone. Pretending to be an apprentice healer from the west, Kent hides his true origin and wonders how the situation with the skeletons is unfolding. Kent continues to pretend to be a simple healer's apprentice, saying he's never treated anyone for real. As an excuse, he asks for help to get a guild card so he can work. The garrison captain, believing his story, offers to take him to the guild personally. Kent arrives at the fortified city of Volzard and is impressed by the appearance of the place and the people. He realizes this world is truly different, with people having colorful hair and exotic appearances, including animal traits. As he walks with the guard through the city, Kent observes the wide, well-maintained streets. He learns that the maintenance is done with magic, explaining the city's flawless appearance. He also notices an old wall dividing the new part of the city from the old. Kent arrives at the guild, accompanied by the captain, and is impressed by its structure. Although it's mainly for adventurers and skilled artisans, he's reassured that there will be simple work available. He introduces himself and starts the registration process by placing his hand on the indicated device. Kent takes the magical evaluation test using the Evil Eye crystal, hoping his recent experience in the Demon Forest will show a different result. However, the crystal reacts the same way as before, and he receives the lowest ranking again, F rank, considered unusual but still weak. Despite his F rank magical classification, Kent surprises the evaluator by saying he survived the Demon Forest. The old man questions how someone so weak managed that, until Kent reveals he was escorted by 3 extremely dangerous skeletons. This changes the perception of everyone around him. Kent is surprised by a girl with cat ears who appears excited and asks if he's a newcomer. He's stunned to see someone with such a different appearance, noting it's the first time he's encountered someone with cat ears. Kent is confronted by a young man with wolf ears named Gilk, who gets irritated seeing him stare at the cat-eared girl. The girl, named Mool, tries to calm the situation and introduces herself in a friendly manner. Kent explains that he was with a group of merchants from the west, but they were attacked by monsters in the Demon Forest. He says he's fine, but shows concern for the others who were with him. Mool hugs Kent tightly, wanting to comfort him but accidentally suffocating him in the process. Kent tries to ask for air as Gilk, frustrated, gets angry over the scene. After much effort, Kent manages to break free and breathes a sigh of relief, feeling like he was about to die. Gilk charges at him, angrily accusing Kent of holding his sister for too long. Gilk is reprimanded for overreacting, while Muel, unaware of the danger she caused, just smiles. At the guild, Kent is advised to start with simple work because of his F rank. They suggest something light, like harvesting on a farm. He accepts the suggestion, and the group confirms the job is decided. Kent needs a place to stay, but can't use the items he collected from the forest because they're stored in the shadows, which could raise suspicion. The guild attendant notices this and lends him 10,000 helts interest-free to help. Kent is directed to a lodging called Amanda's. The owner greets him warmly upon learning he survived a monster attack in the forest. Although lunch is over, she welcomes him with empathy, moved by the difficult situation he's been through. Kent explains that he borrowed money from the guild, but doesn't have the skills for a good job. Still, the owner agrees to let him stay, saying he can pay the rent at the end of the month. The monthly rent is 2,500 helts, with an additional 500 if he wants meals. The stay is arranged, and Kent thanks her for her kindness. Kent says goodbye to the guard who helped him and promises to return when he's better. The owner introduces him to a girl named Mesa, saying he'll be staying there from now on. The reception is cold, and another girl comments rudely, while Kent wonders who the room's previous occupant was. Kent learns that the previous guest of the inn was sent straight to a dungeon and never returned. The owner warns him to avoid such dangerous places. Soon after, Misa is tasked with showing Kent his room, and he follows her up the stairs. Kent asks if the dungeons are really dangerous, and Misa responds bluntly, making it clear that it's risky. She then shows him the room where she'll be staying. The space is simple, with just the basics. Kent thanks her, looks around the room, and realizes his life will be more modest from now on. As Kent tries to understand what's going on, he discovers that the Kingdom of Riesenberg has now become the Republic of Landsbert. The country was divided while he was in the Demon Forest. This raises concerns about potential attacks, but also suggests that the political situation has completely changed. The skeletons accompanying him note that the city is more prosperous than when they were alive, with more growth and movement. Kent observes that Volzard is much better now than when his allies were alive. He wonders if the current rulers are truly good at politics. Despite that, he starts worrying about the possibility of a war and having to face his old comrades. While thinking about this, he also reflects on the city's growth, which now houses many civilians in addition to adventurers. The skeletons reassure him, saying that even with magic, he would still need years of training to truly fight. Kent decides to divide tasks with his allies. Fred heads off to spy on the kingdom of Riesenberg through the shadows. Baston stays to protect him, and Reinhardt goes to check out Volzard. Meanwhile, Kent starts working normally in the city to observe how things are. On the third day of work, he wakes up with an unexpected and intense pain. Kent starts working on the farm, harvesting fruits, thinking it would be easy, but quickly realizes the work is exhausting and draining. With muscle aches all over his body, he uses self-healing magic to ease the pain and keep going. Kent is getting used to the farm work and shows eagerness to help. He's praised for contributing to a bountiful harvest, but notices that Dino, one of the older workers, is in pain. Even offering help as a former healer's apprentice, another worker says Kent already has enough to deal with. Kent uses his healing magic on Dino, focusing on his back. The treatment is so effective that Dino feels immediate relief, surprised that he no longer feels any pain. Happy with the result, Kent celebrates the success of his first healing session. Kent manages to use his healing magic successfully, but comments that he doesn't feel anything special doing it. Still, Reinhardt acknowledges his talent and says his abilities are exceptional, to the point where he could be the best healer in the country. Despite the praise, they all remember that there are still many problems ahead, especially with Kent's fellow classmates. Kent agrees to extend his work to ensure payment, realizing that a week passed quickly. During this time, he starts to rethink whether he truly wants to go back home, remembering the problems he had with his parents in Japan. Fred returns with important news. Kent's classmates are still near the summoning site, raising concerns about how they are being treated. Kent learns that his classmates are still in the area where they were summoned but in poor conditions. Some are treated better, especially the girl considered the Saint, who has high magical power with a light affinity. Fred is still investigating what's happening behind the princess's plans, while Kent tries to learn more about Baston, the Lord of Volzard, considered a peculiar figure. Kent and the others discover more about Klaus Volzard, the current lord of the city. He took over after his brother's death and seems to be a fair and respected man. He has a history as an adventurer and knows the city well. He's been implementing social reforms, such as limiting excessive interest rates, controlling gambling houses, and helping poor neighborhoods. His firm stance against illegal businesses and focus on the population's well-being have made him very popular. Kent thinks he seems like a nice guy. Kent meets Karts and Bert, who seem happy to see him. He mentions he's been working hard on the farm and is tired. Bert introduces himself and says he's heard good things about him. Kent thanks for the hospitality and offers to buy lunch as a way of repaying, but the captain, embarrassed, says he's just doing his job. They walk through the city streets, guided by Bert, who comments that it's good to have Kent around. Despite the friendly atmosphere, Bert notes that the captain is a bit strict. Kent, Bert, and Karts arrive at a restaurant and are greeted by a striking waitress. She greets them warmly and leads them to a table at the back. Karts, already known there, is treated with familiarity, showing he's a regular customer. Kent just thanks, a bit surprised by the setting. Karts introduces Kent to the waitress, explaining directly that he's the only survivor of a caravan attacked in the Demon Forest. The girl is surprised and touched by the tragic story, while Kent, embarrassed, realizes his situation is being exposed again in a shameful way. This scene shows the waitress hugging Kent very closely, with him completely unresponsive and visibly impacted by the situation. Kent wakes up startled in the classroom after hearing his name being called repeatedly. He had been sleeping in the middle of class and is scolded by the teacher, while his classmates laugh at the situation. Kent becomes the target of heavy bullying from his classmates, being called useless and excluded even by the teacher. They mock his appearance and lack of skills, while he listens silently, surrounded by laughter and cruel remarks. Kent wakes up, startled from a nightmare, remembering past traumas. He tries to cover it up, saying everything is fine, but it's clear that something bothers him. Despite this, he feels relieved to be in a place where he's finally useful and valued, unlike his previous life, which became a true nightmare. Kent goes to the guild's notice board looking for a new job. There, he meets Mule again, who recognizes Kent as the boy who went to work on the farm at her suggestion. They talk, and Mule compliments him on how much stronger he looks in just 2 weeks. Gilk teases Kent again, but Mule scolds him. Kent finds out the guild is offering a combat course, and even though he doesn't know how to use a sword, decides to sign up to improve. Gilk teases him again, but Kent stands firm. He refuses to train with Reinhardt, knowing he wouldn't be able to keep up, and chooses a more suitable training for his level. Kent arrives at the combat course and finds a room that looks like a classroom. There, he notices other participants and is approached by one, who asks if he's also F rank, indicating that everyone there is at the same beginner level. Kent introduces himself as F rank to a new boy named Manon. Manon is also F rank and responds kindly. Internally, he feels nervous about Kent's appearance, thinking he looks too flashy and impressive. Kent and the other recruits gather to start the training course. The instructor Donovan appears with intense energy and an intimidating presence. He introduces himself and stresses something important. It's not the weapon that makes someone strong, but how well they can use it. Kent is a bit scared by the instructor's intense demeanor. Donovan continues his motivational speech, using the example of a powerful sword that would be useless if the user didn't have the strength to wield it. He emphasizes that true power comes from training and mastering the weapon, not the weapon itself. The students, including Kent, feel tense and scared by the instructor's intensity, but pay close attention to his words. Donovan gives a lesson about monsters, explaining their types, dangers, weaknesses, and uses as materials. He also talks about weapons and their characteristics. Despite his intimidating face, his explanations are clear and convincing. In the afternoon, everyone practices with wooden swords non-stop, finishing the day exhausted and drenched in sweat. Donovan announces that he'll sign Kent up for the course next Wednesday and expects him to attend. Kent agrees, but when he asks the others if they'll return, they all make excuses to avoid coming back. He realizes he's the only one who continued, tired and surprised by the general abandonment, even from Manon. Kent is surrounded by 2 bandits, demanding money from him. One even pulls out a knife, threatening him if he refuses. Kent tries to deny having anything, but he already realizes he's dealing with more troublesome people. Kent taunts the bandits, mentioning that monsters might appear in the city, and then a skeleton appears behind him, making the 2 thieves panic. The scene clearly shows the skeleton is under Kent's control, scaring the enemies with its dark presence. Kento asks Reinhardt to stop scaring the bandits, and thanks him for his help. As the 2 flee in panic, Kento thinks that if he overdid it, they might figure out he's a dark mage, so it's enough for now. After that, he returns to Amanda's house and collapses onto the bed, exhausted, receiving compliments from his skeleton servant. Kento talks to his servants while resting. He says he didn't feel desperate when facing the bandits, just annoyed. Reinhardt praises his calmness, saying that the worst mistake on the battlefield is losing composure. Kento admits that he still doubts whether he'll be able to act well when the time comes. Mesa suddenly appears, calling him to dinner, and he thanks her before heading over. Mesa suddenly appears and kneels in front of Kento, coldly telling him that if he enters the dungeon as he is, he'll die. She explains that the boy who stayed in the room before him was stronger, yet still never returned from there. Despite the scare, Kento understands that she's just trying to protect him. Kento tries to disguise that he's not going into the dungeon, but Misa sees through his lie. In the kitchen, he gets distracted by the delicious food and tries to change the subject. Meanwhile, Misa insists to her mother that Kento isn't ready to face the dungeon yet, suspecting his intentions. Even though he said he wouldn't go back to that dangerous forest, Kento ends up going again, with the help of a teleportation spell through the shadows. He lies to Amanda and Misa, telling them he won't go. Once in the forest, he arrives at a strange and quiet clearing, perfect for training away from others. Kento arrives with Reinhardt at a training field the size of a stadium. There he starts practicing sword strikes. Even though he injures himself, Kento uses healing magic on himself and continues training with determination, resolved to grow stronger. Kento starts working at the guild's potato storage during the day and training with Reinhardt at night. Even though he only sleeps 3 hours a day, he can handle it thanks to his self-healing magic, which removes fatigue and pain as long as he eats well. Upon arriving at the guild in the morning, he finds Gilk, who calls him a brat. Kento asks where Miel is, and Gilk replies that she's at magic training. Seeing this, Kento decides to attend the magic class as well, thinking he needs to learn everything if he wants to survive. He's curious to see how the class works and wants to experience magic for himself. Kento follows Gilk to the magic training, saying he's curious. Meanwhile, Mill concentrates and casts a powerful wind spell, completely destroying the target. Gilk, proud, says that's his Mu Ain, and that she'll definitely continue to evolve. Kento asks if it's normal for magic to require so many words. Reinhardt explains that yes, powerful spells require more incantations. He says that Kento, for using magic without needing those words, is somewhat unusual. Gilk comments that if a mage takes too long, they can be killed before finishing the spell, which is why they train their movements while casting. Suddenly, an angry man appears, asking what they're doing there. Donovan accuses Gilk of spying and pulls him by the collar. Kento tries to justify that he just wanted to see the magic training. Donovan then says that when facing a mage, you just have to hit them before they finish the incantation, or predict their movements and dodge. Kento denies being there for that, but Donovan understands that his goal is to find a way to counteract magic. Kento, looking tired, comments that he only thinks of solving everything with muscles. Donovan throws Gilk to train with Kento. Gilk complains, asking why he has to deal with him. Donovan tells him to just give Kento a little practice. Gilk gets angry and glares at Donovan, but eventually gives in. Kento tries to justify himself, saying he only wanted to watch the magic training. Reinhardt reminds him of what happened in the Demon Forest, and reinforces that the only way to avoid such things is through training. Kento teases Gilk, laughing and saying that he's scared. Kento is equipped with armor and preparing for the training, but he senses a strange smell coming from the gear. Reinhardt sets the rules. Gilk can only hit Kento where he's armored, while Kento can strike anywhere on Gilk. Kento regrets calling Gilk, and Gilk, with an air of superiority, thinks that Kento has no chance of hitting him. While the audience comments that Kento seems to be doing well with the sword and that perhaps Gilk is in trouble, Kento feels the pressure of the looks and voices around him. Gilk, confident, provokes Kento and calls him to fight. Determined, Kento says that he's been training every day with Reinhardt and is ready to show the results. Kento charges at Gilk with a yell, surprising everyone. Meanwhile, he remembers the advice to stay calm, observe the enemy's movements, and attack at the right moment. Gilk notices something different about Kento's charge, and even Donovan watches seriously. Kento then decides, now, and clenches his fist with determination. Kento charges full force, thinking he's going to surprise him, but Gilk lands a punch directly to his face with force. Kento is left stunned, completely shocked. As he's thrown far, the others rush over, telling them to take him to the infirmary. Gilk feels awkward and says that this shouldn't have happened. Kento wakes up confused when he realizes he's holding something soft while sleeping. Startled, he discovers he was sharing the bed with Mul. Later, she explains that she found him unconscious at the training field, and while caring for him, ended up falling asleep too. Kento recovers from exhaustion and is invited by her to eat something as an apology for what happened. Mul insists on paying for Kento's meal as a way to thank him, despite his loss in the training. While they eat in the cafeteria, an older man comments on Kento's quick recovery, surprised by his physical state after the fight. Another man, in a good mood, says to let the boy eat well so he can recover and become stronger. Kento tries to refuse the meal since he just met Mul, but she insists, saying that the man paying is very rich. Confused, Kento suspects some kind of suspicious relationship between the two. The man then introduces himself as the ruler of Volzard, surprising Kento, who's still new to the region. Kento is introduced to Klaus, the Lord of Volzard. Surprised and nervous, he thanks him politely. Klaus comments that he's heard about Kento's escape from the Demon Forest and congratulates him. Even so, Kento downplays it, saying he was just lucky and that he was considered useless by the evaluation crystals. Klaus, however, emphasizes that those with luck and talent are always welcome in his city. Klaus reprimands Kento for underestimating himself, saying that many people only move forward in life with hard work. He states that no one remains bad if they truly dedicate themselves, and that the duty of leaders is to help others reach their potential. Despite Kento's lack of magical talent, Klaus believes he has dormant abilities that can be awakened through hard work and learning from mistakes. Kento listens to words of encouragement, being reminded that there's a path where he can shine more than others. Moved, he accepts this with tears in his eyes, determined to move forward with effort. Kento recalls how he was always despised and called useless by his classmates, suffering in silence. Still, Klaus was the first to recognize him and encourage him, even knowing he lacked magical talent. In contrast, the princess tried to rid herself of him indirectly. With this in mind, Kento decides to help his classmates escape to Volzard the following morning. Kento arrives at the city of Lostock, on the outskirts of Volzard, and is impressed by how peaceful it is in comparison. He comments on how practical it is to use the shadow travel ability with his companions as reference points. While relaxing by a fountain, he notices the lack of people, and learns that the city was built around 15 years ago. Despite the city's reinforced walls, Kento and the others manage to move through the shadows to enter unnoticed. Meanwhile, inside, a boy named Funayama practices mana control, trying to form a sphere with the energy around him. Guards observe his progress and discuss the impact of food on training results. While Kento watches hidden, he sees knights making clay balls for training. Since they're physically enhanced, even stones thrown by them can be fatal. Reinhardt demands that the apprentices make the clay balls correctly to avoid becoming food for demons. When he sees one fail, he hits them and forces them to obey, making it clear that there's no room for weakness here. The brutal training continues. One of the boys is beaten and forced to choose between obedience or death. Meanwhile, another student demonstrates fire magic, forming a sphere of flames in his hands. Kento watches in shock, realizing how those with little magical aptitude are treated cruelly here. The young warrior unleashes a powerful fire spell, completely destroying the training target. Shiria, a maid, praises his skill, calling him Yusha-sama, while he confidently thanks her. The surrounding guards are impressed by the demonstration, reacting with enthusiasm and admiration. Kento discovers that the boy with the most magical power is called Yusha-sama, and even has an exclusive maid who takes care of everything for him. Surprised and upset, Kento reacts with jealousy at seeing this special treatment. Meanwhile, the hero declares that he'll keep training to get even stronger and protect others. A young woman named Seijo, considered a saint, uses healing magic to treat the wounded. While reciting her spell, her energy envelops her hands and eases a man's pain, who immediately thanks her, feeling much better. She continues working silently, with dedication and kindness. Seijo keeps treating the wounded relentlessly, despite being exhausted. The maids ask her to take breaks, but she insists that she's still fine. One of them stresses the importance of taking care of her health, since many still need help. Meanwhile, they comment that Kento can heal for longer without reciting spells, but acknowledge that Seijo is still considered the best healer on the continent. Even exhausted, Seijo rushes to help a desperate mother whose child has had a fever for 3 days. The guards try to stop her, saying she's already treated many people that day, but Seijo ignores them and starts the treatment immediately, stating that now is not the time to rest. The mother, relieved, thanks her as the boy starts to be treated. Seijo tries to cure the sick child, but after 3 attempts, he shows no signs of improvement. She begins to look visibly worn out, while others notice her growing paleness. Seeing that the situation isn't improving, Kento decides to intervene to help her. While everyone thinks the boy is still in critical condition, his condition starts to improve slowly. His breathing stabilizes, and his face returns to normal. The mother notices the change and, relieved, celebrates the visible improvement in her son. After the treatment, the boy's breathing stabilizes, and his fever decreases. Everyone thanks and praises Seijo, but despite the success, she apologizes for not being able to heal better or faster. Exhausted, she sits down, feeling like she's not good enough to help everyone, as she would like. Even feeling inadequate, Seijo is comforted by a colleague who acknowledges all the effort she has put into helping the residents and fellow healers. Exhausted after a long day of healing, Seijo falls asleep on the sofa. The others notice that she's passed out from exhaustion and praise her, recognizing that she truly deserves the title of saint. While sleeping, Seijo receives a gentle touch on her forehead, accompanied by words of gratitude. This gesture calms her, and she smiles lightly in her sleep. Soon after, she wakes up suddenly, surprised and a little flushed, not fully understanding what just happened. Seijo wakes up surprised, feeling light and rejuvenated, as if all her fatigue had vanished. The maid suggests that she may have leveled up from frequently using magic. She reflects that the treatment of the sick boy was unlike anything she had done before, and perhaps that triggered an improvement in her abilities. 2 days after the first infiltration into Laystock, the group returns for another reconnaissance mission. During their observation, they encounter a royal woman intensely training with a sword. The narrator highlights how rare it is to see someone of noble lineage dedicating so much to combat, as most noble women focus only on appearance and etiquette. While observing Camilla from a distance, the characters discuss her possible intentions and personality, assuming she might be a spoiled and dominant princess. Kento decides to continue observing her closely to not miss any clues about her, emphasizing that he's just on a reconnaissance mission. The group concludes that they haven't gathered any useful information so far. Camilla seems to be the only person in Lostock with knowledge of summoning magic, essential for returning to their world. To negotiate with her, they first need to rescue their comrades from the garrison. 3 points are raised: rescuing the comrades, finding a safe place to host them, and getting an infiltrator among the enemies. The group agrees that Volzard is the only place capable of receiving Kento's comrades, but it might not be able to accommodate all 200 at once. Kento realizes he will need to speak with Klaus to gain support. They decide to extend the rescue period, allowing the comrades to continue training at the garrison to get stronger until the right moment for the escape. The group acknowledges that escorting 200 people through the demon forest will be difficult and dangerous. Therefore, they reinforce the importance of keeping everyone in training so that they become strong and independent. Furthermore, the more prepared they are as soldiers, the higher the chances Klaus will accept them in Volzard. They also discuss the need to choose a trustworthy infiltrator. Inspired by Camilla's training, Kento decides to push himself as well, and trains diligently. His instructor praises his improvement in form. Even though he still has plenty of energy, Kento is advised to stop since it's a day for rest. Sitting on the grass, he wonders what he should do with the rest of his free day. Kento decides to explore the eastern part of Volzard during his rest day. He notices that the area seems to be for women and children, giving off a sense of tranquility. While walking, he considers that he could live there. During his stroll, he enters a weapon shop and notices a broken sword, wondering if it could still be used. Kento thinks about the possibility of repurposing broken swords into daggers, which could even increase their value. Meanwhile, he notices a man without a sword in its sheath, concluding that he must have sold it for money, likely due to vices like gambling, drinking, or women. Kento identifies him as one of the many adults seen as useless by the local society. Kento and the others continue to observe the man who bought the broken sword, curious about his intentions. They follow him through the streets of the city until they realize he enters a brothel. Reinhardt confirms the location, and everyone concludes that the man sold his sword to spend the money there. A tired-looking man stares fixedly at the entrance of a house, as if waiting or looking for someone. Suddenly, he notices something and turns, alert. Inside the house, a well-dressed gentleman descends the stairs with a young woman by his side, clearly comfortable with him. The man outside continues to observe the scene, paying close attention to the couple as they approach. As they draw near, the gentleman discreetly holds a knife hidden in his clothes, raising suspicions about his intentions. An attack seems imminent. In an instant, before anything happens, the observer storms the place and knocks down the gentleman with a quick and precise blow, interrupting whatever plan he was about to execute. The man who caused the commotion gets up angrily, shouting toward the woman, who quickly retreats from the scene. He attempts to draw his sword, but his movement is interrupted. He realizes his leg is paralyzed, which leaves him even more upset. Meanwhile, employees of the establishment appear and surround him, clearly annoyed by the scandal. One of them, standing firm, scolds him for disturbing the other clients. The man, now cornered, begins to sweat nervously, realizing he has no way out. Outside, two observers discuss the situation. One believes it was just a romantic issue that wasn't resolved, while the other realizes that the true target of the attack was the woman who fled moments earlier. The day begins calmly in a village with wooden buildings. A young man wakes up excited and stretches, satisfied with the results of his recent training. Although his body is still lean, he notices small muscle gains and feels motivated. Later in the morning, a girl enters his room and greets him. She reminds him that he's not strong enough yet to face a dungeon, but he believes that with his progress, he'll be able to handle the guild's training without trouble. The boy arrives excited at the guild hall, greeted by two more experienced members, both with cat ears. The woman compliments his physical progress, showing kindness, while the man is more direct, stating that he's still far from being considered strong. The conversation quickly turns into a playful exchange of provocations. The boy tries to maintain his composure, while the man states that he has no interest in women, which sparks reactions from the others present. The woman next to him comments that this attitude is why he's not popular. The atmosphere heats up when the man makes an unexpected gesture, causing astonishment among the others. Kento walks enthusiastically toward the training building, waving and promising to give his best. Some classmates follow him, more out of curiosity and amusement than true support. Among them, one comments that they only came to see him fail. In the training yard, other participants have already gathered. Kento approaches hesitantly, asking if this is the right place. One of the instructors greets him warmly, asking if it's his first time, and he confirms excitedly. Soon after, the instructor tries to assess the boy's profile, asking if he's a knight or a mage. Kento reveals that this is his first class after failing the evaluation. The instructor and the other newcomers react with empathy, saying that they're all starting out and will overcome the difficulties together. Despite the failure, the group encourages him, showing unity and motivating Kento to move forward with confidence. He feels welcomed and happy to be among good people. The instructor confirms everyone's presence and comments that Kento was the only one who showed up for the first class without running away. The boy admits that he did consider skipping, but knew it wouldn't work out. With that, the instructor praises his decision and tells the group to prepare, officially starting the training. The instructor announces a training fight and asks Kento to choose his opponents. The challenge is clear: defeat 3 classmates to advance in rank. The other newcomers react with tension and hope they aren't chosen. Kento, still reflecting on being considered a failure, realizes that maybe he was chosen to push himself beyond his own limits. Not knowing anyone, Kento lets the instructor choose his opponent. The decision falls on Isaac, one of the strongest recruits. Kento feels the pressure upon seeing the imposing physique of his opponent. The instructor then explains the rules. Any valid strike on the armor is allowed, except on the face, and the fight ends when the instructor deems the attack enough to incapacitate. The fight begins with the instructor's signal. Isaac charges confidently, sure he'll win quickly. He advances with full force, aiming to end the fight decisively. Kento, on the other hand, remains firm, focused, and ready to face the challenge despite the pressure. With a quick and precise move, Kento strikes Isaac with enough force to knock him down. The impact is clear, and even his opponent is surprised by the result. The instructor declares Kento the winner, surprising everyone. Despite being considered the weakest, he won the first challenge with skill. Everyone is shocked by Kento's victory with a single strike. The girl with cat ears celebrates excitedly, while Kento realizes he only won thanks to his recent training. He understands that if it had been earlier, he would have lost easily. The instructor then calls the next challenger, keeping the rhythm of the trial. The second fight begins with both fighters on alert. Kento's opponent, aware of the previous victory, decides not to underestimate him. Kento realizes he's being analyzed and believes his opponent is waiting for an opening. With both motionless, the tension builds until the opponent decides to take the initiative. The fight intensifies when Kento charges first with a battle cry. The opponent reacts quickly, drawing his sword and rushing into the confrontation. Both exchange blows with speed and force, circling the field intensely, trying to find a gap in each other's defense. Kento strikes directly at the opponent's gauntlet, forcing him to drop his weapon and surrender with pain in his hand. The instructor declares Kento the winner, marking his second victory. The cat-eared girl celebrates excitedly, while another classmate watches with skepticism, thinking it was just luck. Even so, Kento continues to surprise everyone. Kento prepares for his third and final fight. His opponent now is Colt, a boy with a strange appearance and intimidating attitude. He refuses to use a shield and provokes Kento, saying he's only a little strong. Colt's confident posture and quirky mannerisms make Kento uneasy. The signal to start is given, and the tension rises between the two. Colt charges with total madness, shouting and moving erratically. Kento is confused by his bizarre behavior, unsure of what to expect. Even so, he reacts instinctively, raising his shield to block the unpredictable charge coming at him. Colt continues his frenzied attacks, with erratic and unpredictable movements. Kento can barely keep up, constantly forced to defend with his shield. Even so, he realizes that his reflexes and control have improved thanks to his training. Despite the chaos, he manages to stay calm and avoid being hit. Colt executes an unpredictable move and hits Kento, knocking him to the ground. The instructor calls an end to the fight and declares Colt the winner. Kento, surprised, acknowledges that he was hit. While some observers react with surprise, Colt celebrates in his eccentric way, maintaining his odd aura. Despite the loss, Kento demonstrated great progress. Colt celebrates his victory in an exaggerated way, but is soon designated to fight Isaac. Frightened, he tries to change opponents, but the instructor insists. Meanwhile, Kento recognizes that he lost because he was caught off guard, and his teammate comments that if he had stayed calm, he would have won. Even so, Kento accepts the lesson with good humor. Colt tries to repeat his crazy strategy against Isaac, but this time it doesn't work. Isaac stays calm, observes the movements, and ends the fight with precision. The instructor announces Isaac's victory, and he smiles confidently. The difference in level is clear when comparing Isaac's controlled technique to Colt's improvised madness. Kento reflects on his loss and realizes that Colt relies only on surprises, without mastering the basics. He understands that if he had controlled the pace of the fight, he would have won. Despite the defeat, he acknowledges that it was a valuable lesson. While thinking about this, another fight ends quickly with another victory by Isaac, impressing everyone with his strength. Kento is called for his next fight, now against Isaac once again. Determined, he responds confidently. Isaac, on the other hand, faces the situation seriously, recognizing Kento as a worthy opponent this time. With both ready and focused, the rivalry's atmosphere intensifies. The duel begins again. Isaac is focused, determined not to repeat the previous mistake. Kento notices the change in his opponent's gaze and realizes that the challenge will be even greater. Knowing that winning will lead him to the next class, he prepares himself fully, focused on not wasting this chance. The classmates watch attentively, cheering for Kento. While the cat-eared girl believes in his victory, another one shows doubt, acknowledging that Isaac is different now. On the field, the two stare at each other and start moving cautiously. Kento receives distant support, and soon the confrontation begins, with Isaac attacking first. Isaac charges with full force, pressuring Kento with heavy attacks. Still, Kento manages to stay firm, dodging and retreating at the right moments. Despite trying to retaliate, Kento is hit with a direct blow and ends up losing his weapons. Isaac is declared the winner and celebrates eagerly. Even with the loss, Kento is surrounded with concern by everyone, showing the respect he gained during the fights. Kento feels his arm numb after the blow, but tries to downplay the situation. The instructor and Isaac express concern, considering taking him to the infirmary. Despite this, Kento insists that he's fine and tries to smile, showing resilience. Everyone around is surprised by his determination, praising his strength even after the loss. Even with his injured arm, Kento insists on continuing. The instructor acknowledges his courage, but points out that he was too defensive during the fight. A teammate suggests an individual training session to further strengthen his skills. Kento reflects on his limits and, with renewed motivation, wins 3 consecutive fights, showing clear improvement in his performance. Kento is approved for the next class after his victories. The instructor warns him that the challenges will be even greater from now on, recommending more intense training. Kento's joy quickly turns to nervousness as he realizes what lies ahead, while his teammates encourage him with a mix of support and fun. As Kento walks through the city with his group, he notices they are being followed. One of his companions confirms it, but asks him to keep walking normally. Although they think it might not be anything serious, caution increases. Observing from a distance, a suspicious group hides behind barrels, keeping their eyes fixed on them. Kento recognizes the 4 people following him. They are the same ones who skipped training that day with excuses. He realizes they have been watching him since last week, always hiding during the morning classes. Reinhardt comments that they are likely trying to figure out how Kento suddenly got so strong. With that in mind, Kento decides to see what they'll do next. Meanwhile, hidden behind a fence, the group watches Kento approach a building and discusses among themselves. One of them thinks that this place isn't the inn where he stays, but rather the place where he does special training. Kento enters calmly, greeted by Amanda, who invites him to dinner. As they spy from the outside, the group tries to guess what kind of special training Kento has been doing. One suggests the training might begin after dinner. Another suspects it's not something normal, and maybe there's a high-level adventurer staying in the same house as Kento. They wonder when the training will begin, but have no idea what the truth really is. Kento, in his thoughts, remembers that his real training place is the Demon Forest, and that his mentor is an absurdly strict warrior skeleton with completely unconventional methods. Reflecting in his room, Kento says he has a strategic idea. His little companion asks what they'll do next. Confidently, he decides not to go to the dungeon and focuses on another plan. In the kitchen, he tells Amanda that he'll train with his wooden sword in the backyard and asks her to call him when dinner is ready. She agrees calmly. Shortly after, Kento begins his training seriously, practicing alone in the inn's yard. Kento starts his training with strange movements and exaggerated poses, spinning the wooden sword energetically. He yells excitedly while practicing, not caring about his appearance. Hidden behind a bush, his classmates watching are shocked by what they see, unsure whether it's serious or just madness. While Kento trains with strange movements in the backyard, Amanda and another girl watch him through the window, confused and worried. They comment on whether he's mentally stable. However, Kento remains focused, explaining that this is a traditional practice method from the country's most famous dojo. He says that although it might look strange to an observer, the secret of the technique lies in the hips. The girl starts reflecting, finding it interesting, though still doubtful that anyone could fight like that. Kento continues moving in an odd way, holding a sword in one hand and a fan in the other, pretending to be wise. He says that only those who have reached the master level understand the depth of what he's doing. But he quickly admits to himself that it's all a big lie. In reality, he's just fulfilling a bizarre punishment for leaving his little companion alone to deal with the skeleton trainer. Outside, his classmates continue to watch, not understanding anything, wondering if there's any real purpose behind these bizarre movements. Kento prepares for another training session and asks Reinhardt to go easy on him. But deep down, he knows the skeleton is brutal, capable of crushing goblins and ogres with a single strike. He decided that the best way to evolve was to face Reinhardt in individual training. When the skeleton charges with insane speed, Kento immediately realizes this session will be anything but easy. Reinhardt charges at Kento without giving him time to breathe. The boy tries to ask for calm, but the skeleton demands he attack immediately. Kento can't keep up with the pace and takes a hard blow. Despite this, Reinhardt remains relentless, saying he won't go easy. For him, if he's going to train Kento, it will be in the harshest way possible. With a sinister smile, he makes it clear that he's doing this because he wants Kento to become truly strong. At the end of the night training, Reinhardt announces that it's enough for today. Kento collapses on the ground, gasping, but thanks him sincerely. Despite the exhaustion, he feels he's making progress. Reinhardt comments that at this pace, the training could be completed in 2 weeks. Kento, determined, says he needs to push even harder because he's taken too long to take everything seriously. The skeleton, impressed, admits that even in life, few people trained with the dedication Kento is showing. Before they head back, Kento decides to practice some magic. He noticed that the offensive light magic takes too long to activate, so he wants to improve that. Reinhardt supports the idea. Kento starts testing his magic, aiming to reduce the activation time. As he tries multiple times, the time begins to drop, showing that his effort is paying off. Kento realizes that, despite the magic being strong, it takes far too long to cast. He admits that he doesn't even trust himself to hit moving targets. Reinhardt suggests he imagine pulling a bow as a way to visualize and facilitate the activation. Kento tries to incorporate this idea, making a gesture with his fingers as if they were a gun while counting softly. He begins adapting his technique with this new concept, striving for more efficiency in using the magic. Kento trains using the finger gesture like a pistol and manages to cast magic faster. He hits a target and realizes that the new strategy works better than he expected. With practice, he reduces the activation time for the magic. Satisfied with his progress, they decide to end the training for the day. Kento and Reinhardt encounter a group of ogres, led by an ogre king, a much stronger and more resilient version. Reinhardt explains that the ogre king is harder to defeat. Kento prepares to attack with magic and asks for cover in case he misses the shot. Kento uses his magic, counting 1, 2, 3, and manages to defeat the ogre king with a single precise shot, leaving the other ogres shocked as they watch their leader fall immediately. Kento eliminates all the ogres with his light magic, including the ogre king, effortlessly. He realizes just how powerful his magic is, and even feels bad for taking all the fun away from Reinhardt, who just watches in awe of Kento's performance. The next morning, Kento has breakfast as usual, but is observed with suspicion. The girls find it strange how much he eats and how he never makes noise at night, suspecting he's hiding something. He tries to defend himself, saying he's not suspicious, but his responses only increase their doubts. Kento says he'll visit the wall construction site in the city, trying to appear natural but may remain suspicious of him. Despite this, he says goodbye and goes on his way. The scene then shows a panoramic view of Volzard, revealing how the city has grown. It used to be square, but now, with the new districts, the perimeter has become irregular. Kento observes the construction site of the walls and notices that they are always looking for new workers. He realizes that only work at this site is contracted and paid directly, without going through the guild. As he walks through the market, he comments that those who work outside the guild or do business in the city need to pay taxes. But if someone can't afford the tax, they can compensate by working on the city's wall construction. He runs into Klaus-san and greets him with a "Good morning, Klaus-san." He then mentions that many men in the city help with the wall construction once a week, and some only once a month. A group of workers shouts excitedly, "It's the wall that protects us," while one of them explains that the daily wage on the construction site is 350 helts, the same as what's paid at the garam potato storage for a day of work. Kento says that after learning about the wall project, he wanted to contribute to the city, even if it was just a small help. The man he encounters responds in surprise, "Oh, isn't it Kento? What happened to your work?" He then offers to teach him everything from the beginning and warns that Kento will have to toughen up that day. Kento, surprised, asks if Klaus-san also works there. Klaus confirms, "Of course. The foreman tells me what to do at the construction site. I'm just another worker here." Kento comments that he didn't expect the work to be so tough, but is praised for doing well as a beginner. He then asks why a lord like Klaus is there working with the others. Klaus replies that he does field work because there are things you can only understand by seeing them up close. Kento says that he thought Klaus was there because he was being impatient. Klaus looks surprised by the observation and begins to reflect. He wonders if he's acting this way because of the nearby demon forest, and concludes that he might indeed be impatient. But deep down, all he wants is to make Volzard safer for the next generation. Klaus remembers that, even though it seems safe today, danger can appear at any time. He mentions an attack that happened 25 years ago when ogres suddenly invaded the city. The scene shows the chaos of that day, with giant ogres grabbing and trying to devour helpless girls as they screamed in desperation. During the ogre attack, a warrior appears to protect the civilians. He defeats one of the monsters with a precise blow and rescues Amanda, who was about to be devoured. She thanks him emotionally, calling him "my lord." He tells her to run to the old city where it's safer and then continues checking the surroundings, worried if there are more people to save. The warrior watches carefully as 3 massive ogres appear, destroying everything around them. These are an even stronger version of the regular ogres called rock ogres, and they arrive carrying people as hostages. Surprised and tense, the warrior recognizes the danger. The warrior runs desperately when he hears a cry for help from the rubble. One of the ogres is about to crush the victim, but he arrives in time and blocks the attack with his sword. Despite the enemy's brutal strength, he stands firm and declares that he won't allow these creatures to do whatever they want in his city. Klaus realizes that there are more ogres coming and remains on guard. Meanwhile, one of the soldiers informs Donovan that 3 rock ogres are causing destruction in the eastern side. Donovan decides to leave that location to the others and proceed with the mission. It's explained that ogres are very dangerous enemies, and facing them alone is practically impossible unless you're a high-level adventurer. Therefore, the best tactic is to surround them with multiple people and act as a group. Klaus holds his brother's body in his arms, crying and refusing to accept his loss. The memory of the last battle comes to mind. They were able to win thanks to Donovan's help, but if they face the same enemies again, it would be much harder. Meanwhile, Kento remembers the previous night when he easily defeated a rock ogre with his light magic. Curious, he questions whether that creature was truly that strong. Klaus explains that these monsters are extremely rare and dangerous. This makes Kento wonder, if he managed to defeat something like that alone, does that mean he's already at the level of an elite adventurer? Kento learns more about the enemy he defeated the previous night. The rock ogre, as the name suggests, has a body as tough as stone, making it difficult for swords or spears to penetrate. They are larger and stronger than regular ogres, requiring 5 or 6 warriors at Gilk's level to face them safely. Shocked, Kento realizes just how dangerous the creature he faced alone really was. Klaus and the other warrior confirm that even thinking about a monster like that, wandering the demon forest, sends chills down their spines. Kento, visibly shaken, wonders what he would do if he encountered another one there. During a patrol or training mission, Reinhardt eliminates ogres with powerful punches, destroying them with ease. While he laughs excitedly, even a little terrifyingly, Kento silently watches, relieved that Reinhardt is on his side. The impact is so intense that all Kento can remember is the image of the skeleton smashing enemies with a chilling smile on his face. The next day, Kento goes to the guild as usual and finds a crowd gathered at the mission board, all fighting for the best requests. He finds Manon, who greets him shyly. Kento comments to Otto about the commotion, and the old man explains that everyone is after the missions with the highest rewards, reaching 200 helts. Since the amount of sake one can drink at night depends on this, everyone wants to make as much profit as possible. Kento feels uncomfortable when he runs into Manon, recalling the time he fooled her and the others with his fake kokubu style. Even so, they both admit they are there to look for work. After a brief exchange of words, Manon suggests they work together that day, and Kento, a little hesitant, agrees. Manon comments that some people seem to be trying to figure out the reason behind Kento's sudden growth, which he interprets as an investigation into the secret of his progress. While they observe the guild's mission board, they both notice how crowded the place gets every morning, making it hard to even approach. As they talk, they spot other classmates in the crowd, including Marie, Tariq, and Ridner, who can barely move due to the tight space. Kento sighs, saying he's already exhausted before even starting work. Meanwhile, Manon seems oddly nervous beside him. The two exchange looks in silence, and Kento, sensing something unusual in her behavior, directly asks what's going on. Manon looks visibly surprised and flushed. Manon tries to mask her nervousness, changing the subject to Kento, but he insists on knowing what kind of work she would like to do. After a moment of hesitation, they decide to try something new, working as apprentice gardeners. They then head to the house of the gardener Oren, located in the 2nd district, outside the old city. Kento and Manon arrive at the place where they plan to start as apprentices. The gardener Oren greets them warmly and mentions that he needs more help for the day's work, which will be at the Lord's mansion. Since he and his son can't handle it alone, Kento and Manon's arrival is very timely. Everyone heads to the mansion, ready to start the job. Kento and Manon's first task of the day is to pull weeds. Kento recognized the tool as something he used in the past, remembering the school days when this type of work was punishment for sleeping in class. Still, he gets excited, saying he'll use the gardening fork skillfully and finish quickly, ensuring that no root is left behind. Kento starts pulling the weeds so fast that he impresses Manon, leaving her shocked by his agility. The man supervising them praises their performance and asks them to continue. Manon, still trying to keep up, receives words of encouragement not to be intimidated. Kento, on the other hand, notices some weeds still around, but no one seems to care, perhaps because he's handsome. Kento greets Klaus and explains that he's trying different kinds of work, including gardening. Klaus encourages the boy to gain as much experience as possible while he's young, as it will be useful in the future. He then introduces his daughter Beatrice to Kento, who is surprised to see her. Beatrice introduces herself politely and gracefully. Kento, taken aback by her appearance and presence, becomes visibly nervous and stammers when returning the greeting, trying to maintain formality and show respect to her and Klaus. Kento is captivated by Beatrice's appearance, noticing her vibrant red hair and striking brown eyes. Klaus comments that she's a year younger and calls her cute, which makes Kento even more nervous. However, the conversation takes a tense turn when Klaus, with a serious look, threatens Kento with death if he tries anything with his daughter. Beatrice firmly rebukes her father, asking him not to say anything strange to Kento. Klaus tries to justify himself, shifting the responsibility onto Kento, who can only respond nervously. Despite being suspicious, Beatrice wishes Kento good luck with his work. Klaus, with a smile on his face, begins to murmur threats repeatedly in his mind, clearly still keeping an eye on Kento. After the workday, Kento feels more tired than during the task itself. Manon stares at him silently, which confuses him. He thinks that perhaps she's judging him for interacting with people of higher status, something she, as a commoner, had never experienced. Despite this, the day ends with a promise of a special dinner prepared by Oren-san, and Kento decides to relax with a bath before the meal. During a meal, the characters discuss Kento's behavior. One of them defends that Kento did not have bad intentions, while another asks everyone to eat before the food gets cold. Kento, downcast, admits that he has already thought about what he did. One of the boys hopes that Kento is regretful. Meanwhile, a third person comments that Kento probably didn't even know Manon was a girl. In his thoughts, Kento reveals that, in reality, he enjoyed the whole confusion more than feeling guilty, especially since they took a bath together afterward. Kento eats happily and praises the sausage, clearly enjoying the meal. He thanks and continues eating a lot, while the woman who prepared the food seems pleased that he is enjoying it. One of the boys watches Kento's appetite with surprise and comments on how he manages to eat so much. Kento notices that Manon barely touched her food. Kento tries to convince Manon to eat, saying that if she doesn't eat properly, she won't get stronger. But he ends up expressing himself poorly, leaving the other boy in shock. Realizing his mistake, he apologizes and tries to correct himself, saying that food is essential for a strong body. The elder emphasizes that both Kento and Manon are in their growing phase and should eat a lot. After the meal, Kento thanks for the food. It is already night, and he offers to accompany Manon home, saying it is unsafe for a girl to walk alone. She thanks him, a bit embarrassed. As they walk, Manon thinks about how Kento became so strong so quickly, and he tries to answer but becomes awkward. Manon is surprised to learn that Kento trains with Gilk, which embarrasses him for almost revealing that he has been training in secret. He comments that he probably got stronger thanks to those secret training sessions. Kento doesn't understand why Gilk agreed to train him since he is a highly respected figure. Still, he wonders if maybe Gilk would also be willing to teach something to Manon in the future. Kento thinks about using Gilk as an excuse to justify his strength, without revealing that he has been training secretly. He believes that if he shows up training with Gilk, others will assume he became strong because of that. With this in mind, he decides to continue his secret training at night, pretending that it's all thanks to the training with Gilk. During the training, Kento gives his best, but can only defend against the attacks, with no chance to retaliate. Nevertheless, he doesn't give up. While resting, he asks why there are so few monsters in the demon forest. The skeleton explains that it's because of the aura he releases, which scares goblins and kobolds, keeping them away. A group of ogres appears in the forest, more numerous than before. The kids watch and count at least 7 enemies, including a stone ogre. While Kento sleeps, the two agree on a strategy to face the monsters alone. One will face 3 ogres, and the other will take care of the rest, ready to cover each other if something goes wrong. One of the boys starts the fight by counting the enemies from a distance and begins casting spells precisely. He hits the ogres one by one, aiming confidently. As the hits land, he continues with concentration until he targets the last enemy, ready to finish them all. Kento eliminates all the ogres with a single attack, receiving praise for his performance. Despite this, he comments that he still wants to improve, increasing his shooting speed or adjusting his strength. The skeleton admires his ambition. Then, they notice something strange. There are too many stone ogres, something considered rare, raising suspicions about the situation. The skeleton explains that the variation in the number and type of demons depends on the forest's region, and that being so deep in the forest may justify the appearance of stone ogres. He offers to gather the materials from the fallen monsters, such as magical stones and horns, allowing Kento to rest for the next day. Kento thanks and agrees with the suggestion. Manon arrives excited, greeting Kento, who looks visibly nervous when he sees her. He remembers the moment he discovered she was a girl, which still embarrasses him. 2 other characters notice his strange behavior and wonder what is going on with him. Kento watches Manon and thinks about how cute she looks that day, making her blush when he comments aloud. He is surprised by her reaction and starts thinking if he could try to look cute too. Shortly after, he meets Gilk and greets him politely, receiving a more curt reply from the warrior. Kento asks if Muel is having a lesson at that moment, but Gilk responds tersely, saying yes and already walking away. When Kento tries to leave, Manon grabs him by the collar, saying she will go with him to keep an eye on him and make sure he doesn't disturb Muel. Kento feels uncomfortable with the situation, being dragged along while complaining about the pain in his neck. Kento, Gilk, and Manon are approached by Donovan in the hallway. He asks if Kento will train with Gilk again. Kento confirms and says that Manon will also join them. Donovan praises Kento for including his friends in the training, while Gilk reacts with surprise. Donovan then pressures Gilk, asking if he has a problem with that, leaving the warrior uneasy and denying it. Kento discreetly celebrates, satisfied with the success of his plan to include Manon in the group. Donovan then asks Kento to show how much he has improved since the last training. Gilk, even reluctant, agrees and prepares for another combat session with Kento. Kento enters the training field with his armor, ready to face Gilk. He respectfully introduces himself but hesitates at the start of the fight. Gilk taunts him, asking him to attack already. When Kento finally charges, Gilk quickly stops him and says he is too slow, leaving Manon worried as she watches the strike. Kento stands up with determination and charges with a yell, delivering a direct kick against Gilk. In the midst of the action, he believes he has landed the hit, confident that he now has the advantage. Gilk, surprised by the move, acknowledges that Kento is improving but keeps his guard up. Kento manages to dodge a direct attack from Gilk, surprising everyone, including Donovan, who watches with interest. Gilk, irritated, warns that just because Kento managed to dodge once, he shouldn't get cocky. He charges for another attack, intensifying the fight. Kento lands a direct blow on Gilk, knocking him down and ending the fight. Gilk falls to the ground, irritated, while Donovan declares Kento the winner. Kento celebrates with a smile, pleased with his victory. Kento reflects on his victory, realizing that he managed to hit Gilk at the last moment, even though he was at a disadvantage. Will appears excited, cheering for him like a cheerleader. Manon, seeing the scene, watches Kento with an uncomfortable look, which he quickly notices. Now it's Manon's turn to fight. Nervous, she timidly introduces herself for the duel. Gilk, still upset with his defeat to Kento, pressures her to start already. Kento watches and teases, suggesting that Gilk just wants to take out his frustration. Donovan, in turn, warns Gilk not to overdo it in the fight. Gilk easily defeats Manon in the duel, leaving her lying on the ground. Donovan announces the result and calls for the next fight. Kento versus Gilk again. The two stare at each other seriously. Kento respectfully introduces himself, while Gilk warns him to get ready, indicating he won't go easy this time. Kento positions himself determinedly, stating that he will make Gilk recognize his abilities. Gilk, with a challenging smile, acknowledges Kento's courage and charges for the attack. Kento raises his shield, ready to defend, as the fight begins with intensity. Gilk advances with surprising speed, pressuring Kento with rapid and continuous attacks. Kento feels the difference in pace and is forced to retreat, trying to defend with the shield. In his thoughts, he realizes that he will lose if he continues like this, and decides to gather strength to counterattack and push Gilk back. Kento focuses too much on defending the front with his shield, leaving his back unprotected. Donovan watches and concludes that this will be an easy win for Gilk. Realizing the gap too late, Kento panics as he sees Gilk preparing to attack from behind. Gilk strikes Kento hard in the back, knocking him down. The impact is strong enough to break a few ribs, as Gilk himself comments, satisfied. Donovan also notices the harsh sound of the blow. As Manon and Muel rush over worried, Kento feels the intense pain and knows he needs to heal his wounds quickly. Kento gets up smiling and says he's fine, despite having just received a hard blow to his ribs. Donovan watches his quick recovery with suspicion. He thinks that no ordinary human can heal broken bones so fast, and reveals that he has suspected something since Isaac hit Kento. With a serious look, he directly asks, "Who are you really?" Donovan grabs Kento by the collar, suspecting he's a spy from Riesenberg. Kento, scared, doesn't resist and just agrees. Meanwhile, the skeleton appears through a portal and informs them that there is an emergency. A horde of ogres is approaching the demon forest. Manon and Muel watch worriedly as Kento is taken away quickly. Guards inform Donovan about the approaching ogre horde. Pressured by the urgency, he questions Kento, but there's no time for an interrogation. Donovan throws Kento into the library and orders him to stay there until his return. A man runs desperately through the forest, screaming for help as he flees from something. He stumbles and falls, but quickly tries to get up, even out of breath and panicked. The fear on his face is evident as he continues to flee, shouting for help. A horde of armed ogres advances toward the city. The guards, on alert, are ordered to prevent the monsters from entering and prepare the defensive weapons. Then, a rain of arrows is fired from the walls in an attempt to hold off the attack before the ogres get any closer. Kento asks Baston how many ogres are attacking. The skeleton estimates more than 200, including a stone ogre, and says that in a normal battle, there would be many casualties. Kento acknowledges that it's more than the city guards or adventurers could face. Determined, he says that they will handle the situation themselves and calls Fred back. Kento, accompanied by 3 powerful skeletons, decides to act in the face of the threat. Seriously, he leads the group, saying it's time to go. Meanwhile, on the city walls, the guards try to hold back the advancing ogres, ordering the mages to attack before the enemies gain strength. One of the guards responds to the orders and prepares to act. Meanwhile, the ogres continue advancing with full force. One climbs the wall, trying to invade the city, while others attack the base, breaking parts of the structure with sheer brute force. The situation becomes increasingly critical. The ogre begins to climb the wall again, causing panic among the guards. One of them shouts for them to attack quickly as the monster looks down with fury. In response, one of the fighters prepares a weapon and throws a hardball, attempting to prevent the ogre from getting past the city's defenses. The hardball hits the ogre squarely, knocking it off the wall. One of the mages celebrates, believing he brought down the enemy, but another guard claims the credit. Meanwhile, more magical balls are quickly prepared, and a commander orders immediate reinforcements, directing a full box to the earth mages. One ogre has been defeated, but the battle is far from over. The commander shouts firmly that no ogre must enter the city. As he observes the situation, he realizes another ogre is already scaling the wall. Surprised, he readies himself to act, determined to take it down before it surpasses the defenses. A massive stone ogre appears at the top of the wall, causing immediate panic among the defenders. One of the leaders tries to keep everyone calm, shouting for them not to panic. One of the mages quickly launches a magical sphere at the creature, while other soldiers prepare to face it. The tension escalates with the arrival of this much more dangerous foe. The mage attempts to attack the stone ogre in anger, but soon realizes his spells have no effect. The ogre scoffs at him, grabs him effortlessly, and throws him away like a rag doll. The scene shocks the others, showing this enemy is far stronger than any they have faced so far. The thrown mage lands in the middle of the ogre horde and is brutally captured. The monsters grab him and destroy him mercilessly in a violent scene. Meanwhile, Kento watches from the tower, paralyzed and terrified by what he has just witnessed. Kento watches the ogre's brutality in shock. He realizes that he only managed to defeat a few before because he attacked from a distance, avoiding direct confrontation. Now facing the true threat, he feels fear. The creatures with red eyes and overwhelming strength treat humans only as food. As the situation worsens and the ogres press forward, his skeletal allies await orders, ready for action. The skeletons urgently warn Kento that if the stone ogres enter the city, there will be a massacre. They remind him that even Manon and the others won't be safe. Kento, still paralyzed, listens as one insists that the death toll will only rise. Pressured, he hears the direct plea, "Give the order," as they are ready to act. After hesitating, Kento makes a firm decision. He moves toward the wall with his skeletal allies, looks at the battlefield seriously, and raises his hand to give the order without regret. Annihilate them all. To the last one. The skeletons leap off the wall, ready for combat. One of them responds to the order with enthusiasm, while another grins darkly, showing an intense thirst for battle. Driven by hatred, they charge forward with a clear intent to eliminate all the ogres in their path. The skeletons descend with full force, throwing spears and charging at the ogres without hesitation. On the battlefield, one of them takes out 2 enemies with a single blow, advancing with a sadistic smile as the massacre begins. The skeletons become excited by the battle and decide to turn the confrontation into a competition among themselves. While one charges fiercely at the ogres, Kento watches from a distance and starts calling upon the 3 main warriors, Reinhardt, Baston, and Fred. Kento runs toward the top of the wall, determined to act. Meanwhile, one of the soldiers panics at the rock ogre's advance, unsure of what to do. A man is about to be crushed by the monster, but a well-aimed attack strikes the creature's forehead, halting the fatal blow. The rock ogre falls dead before the group, surprising all the soldiers, who don't understand what happened. While some are still trying to comprehend the situation, Kento watches from a distance, relieved that no one was hurt, and satisfied that he acted in time. The soldiers realize more ogres are still climbing the walls, including another rock ogre. Despair starts to take hold of some, while others try to stay focused and maintain order in their attack. The pressure increases with every moment as the horde continues advancing. One of the rock ogres takes a precise hit to the head and begins to fall. The soldiers watch in astonishment as more enemies are suddenly knocked down. The situation repeats itself, leaving everyone in shock at the force that is acting against the ogres. The soldiers watch as the battlefield fills with fallen ogres. Everyone is confused, not understanding what is happening. Donovan arrives and tries to grasp the situation. The present soldiers explain that none of them attacked, yet the ogres are still being defeated. The strength of the skeletons begins to draw attention. One skeleton strikes an enemy, cutting it in half. Donovan warns the soldiers to stay alert and inspect the damages, making it clear that they still don't know if the skeletons are allies. Meanwhile, one skeleton faces the ogres with a huge staff, blocking the enemy's advance alone with a decisive blow. One skeleton advances on the ogres with agility and ease, delivering precise blows. Finding no worthy resistance, he shows boredom in the midst of the fight, frustrated by the lack of challenge. While the soldiers watch in confusion, the skeletons appear from nowhere and launch themselves into battle. One of them faces the ogres head-on, provoking them and enjoying the coordinated attack attempts. It seems the skeletons came from beneath the castle walls, surprising the enemies in the middle of the battle. One skeleton stands out on the battlefield, covered in blood, standing among the bodies of fallen ogres. The soldiers watch in awe at the scene, unable to believe what they are seeing. The ogre horde has been completely destroyed, leaving the city's defenders in shock at the outcome. The city is calm again. While the tower bell rings and birds fly across the sky, some young people enjoy a moment of rest in the cafeteria. Manon is sitting at the table with the others, but Kento, exhausted after the battle, decides to leave. He walks to the library, where, surrounded by books, he falls asleep sitting on the floor. Kento is awoken still drowsy, not understanding what's happening. Seeing Donovan up close, he reflexively gets scared, screams, and accidentally calls him an ogre. Donovan, irritated by the commotion, grabs Kento by the collar and drags him along while the boy complains about the pain in his neck. Donovan throws Kento onto the couch forcefully. Soon after, Klaus enters and greets both of them. He recognizes Kento and comments that it seems like he got into some trouble. Klaus questions whether they truly believe the boy is a spy from Riesenberg. Kento, embarrassed, just apologizes with a smile. Donovan suspects that Kento might be hiding something important, possibly even someone influential in disguise. Klaus, serious, decides to interrogate the boy directly, questioning his true identity. Kento, surprised, thinks he will reveal everything later but realizes he has no choice but to explain himself now. Kento finally reveals the truth. He is not from this world. Surprised, the others listen as he explains that he was summoned by Camilla Riesenberg. Now, he begins to tell everything that has happened since he arrived, ready to clarify his identity and earn everyone's trust. Kento recounts everything he's experienced since being summoned. He reveals that around 200 students were brought to this world as soldiers, not heroes. He explains that summoned people usually have above-average magical powers, which is why they were given bracelets that limit their powers. All, except for him. He says he was forced to cross the demon forest alone, and that during a goblin attack, he accidentally summoned an army of skeletons without realizing it. He also discovered that he used his healing powers instinctively to treat his own injuries. All of this made it clear that his powers are far beyond normal. Kento confirms that he has an affinity for two types of magic, light and darkness, something very rare. He believes this is why the crystal that detects bad intentions didn't react to him. The others are shocked when they realize that the three skeletons fighting the ogres were summoned by him. Kento explains that, yes, they were summoned during the goblin attack and have been with him since then, even helping in recent battles. The Lord of the City confronts Kento, saying that there was an uproar because of monsters inside the walls. Kento apologizes, explaining that he reacted when threatened with a knife. The Lord then asks directly if the skeletons are under his command, like familiars. Kento hesitates, unsure of how to answer immediately. Kento confidently states that he trusts the skeletons, saying they would never harm anyone. To him, they are like family, even though they are monsters. The older man retorts that skeletons are still monsters, but Kento insists on his loyalty to them. In response, the man proposes that Kento officially register the skeletons as monsters under his command. Kento accepts without hesitation. Kento shares everything about his comrades trapped in a training camp in Lastok, the uncertainty of Camilla's intentions, and how he arrived in the city of Volzard. He admits that he lied about his identity to enter and that he has been selfish, but still begs for their help to save his friends. In the end, he bows deeply in supplication, making it clear he would do anything for this. Klaus bows to Kento in respect, thanking him for saving the city from the ogre horde. Kento is surprised and nervous by the gesture, asking him to raise his head. Despite the gratitude, Klaus laments and says that, even with everything Kento has done, he still cannot fulfill his request. A serious-looking man looks at the boy and says that he won't be able to help with that matter. The boy is surprised by the response. The man then explains that there are 2 reasons for this, starting to raise 2 fingers to indicate the reasons. The man starts to explain the 2 reasons. The first is that the intentions of the Reisenberg country are uncertain, and if they claim to be dealing with a civil war or monsters, any action against them could be seen as provocation. The second reason is the use of slavery bracelets. Although slavery was abolished in Landschelt, it is still legal in Reisenberg. If they interfere by taking people with these bracelets, it could be used as justification for war. The boy feels embarrassed for not being able to repay the help he received. The man says he can't make a decision alone since it involves the entire country of Landschelt. The boy then suggests an alternative. If the comrades who don't wear slave bracelets can cross the demon forest on their own, it might resolve part of the problem. He admits he doesn't have everything planned yet, but begins to explain the idea. The man, seeing this, gets excited and offers to help, realizing that the boy already has a plan in mind. The man understands the boy's plan, to let them train and get stronger in Reisenberg. Another character praises the strategy, saying he even thought of an infiltrator. The man explains that after an outbreak of monsters, they become more active for a while, and that's why they will need to wait before acting. The boy agrees, knowing that his plan still needs more preparation before it can be put into action. The man suggests using the time before the rescue mission to train the boy. He notes that the boy has already gotten stronger, probably training with skeletons, which could raise suspicions. Therefore, he decides to train him in public, where everyone can see, ensuring no one suspects the sudden growth of his abilities. The boy reacts nervously at the idea. The boy asks if he only needs to pass to the next class to complete the training, but the man enthusiastically replies that there is no end to training. Humans must continue learning and striving throughout their lives. At the intensity of the response, the boy and another character react with fear, but quickly thank the man for his dedication to the training. The man recognizes the boy as the benefactor of the city and advises him to train hard to protect himself. He also says he would like to see the skeletons with his own eyes. The boy agrees with a smile, promises to work hard in training, and will call the skeletons to present themselves. The boy summons 3 skeletons to introduce themselves. The adults watch in surprise as he introduces them. The dark-toned one is Fred, the former unit commander of the Knights. The metallic-looking one is Reinhardt, the former division leader, and the opaque one is Bastien, also a former unit commander. The man asks if, in case another group of monsters attacks, the boy would be willing to cooperate with the city. The boy responds affirmatively, saying that this place is important to him. The man thanks him and says that, although it seems crazy, he is grateful to Princess Camilla for sending him here. In his thoughts, the boy promises to take revenge on the princess, even though he is called deluded by her memory. The man and the skeleton face each other with respect before shaking hands, forming an alliance. The boy watches the scene in awe, hoping that one day he will become someone as incredible as them.